There's a specific kind of loneliness that happens inside relationships. Not the loneliness of being alone, the loneliness of being in the room with someone you love, feeling completely unreachable, and not being able to explain why. You're there, technically present, and completely somewhere else. And the part that doesn't get talked about, the part that makes this specific kind of loneliness so hard to carry, is that the people on the other side of it can feel it too. They just don't know what they're feeling. And neither do you. This video is going to name what's actually happening, not as a character flaw, not as evidence that you're bad at relationships, as a nervous system doing something very specific, something it learned long before these relationships existed. There's a list of things that anxious people do in relationships that nobody has ever fully explained. Not the obvious things, the quiet ones. Canceling plans at the last minute, not because you didn't want to go, but because by the time the day arrived, the mental cost of preparing, performing, and returning home had already been paid 3 times in anticipation. Over-apologizing for things that don't require an apology, for things that weren't your fault, for taking up space, for having a need, for existing in a way that might inconvenience someone. Going quiet in the middle of a conversation, not because you stopped caring, but because something shifted internally and now the words that were available a moment ago are gone. Being physically present and mentally somewhere else entirely. At the dinner table, in the middle of a story someone is telling, you're not there. You're in yesterday's meeting, or tomorrow's difficult conversation, or a version of this evening that went wrong in a way you're already trying to prevent. Here's the thing about that list. Every single item on it looks, from the outside, like a relational problem. Unreliability, excessive guilt, emotional distance, inattention. From the inside, it feels like survival. And that gap between how it looks and what it actually is where the damage lives. Because the people who love you are responding to what they see. And what they see is not what's happening. Anyone who's been in this knows the specific exhaustion of performing presence. Of tracking a conversation while simultaneously managing an internal state that has nothing to do with the conversation. Of laughing at the right moment, asking the right follow-up question, appearing engaged, while something else entirely is running underneath. That's not a character flaw, that's a nervous system that never fully came offline. Let's go one level deeper. Because the behaviors are just the surface. What's underneath them is a nervous system running a threat detection protocol that was never designed to shut off inside a relationship. Here's what hypervigilance looks like in a relationship context. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It looks like reading someone's tone of voice for information about whether they're upset with you. It looks like replaying a conversation from this morning to find the moment where something shifted. Because something shifted. And you need to know why. It looks like interpreting a short text response as evidence of a problem. It looks like being 3 steps ahead of a conflict that hasn't started yet. Preemptively softening, preemptively apologizing, preemptively withdrawing. Because if you can see it coming, you can manage it before it arrives. Research on attachment and nervous system regulation consistently finds that hypervigilance, the chronic scanning for relational threat, is one of the most common and least named features of anxiety in close relationships. It exhausts the person running it, and it creates a particular kind of pressure for the people around them, even when nothing is actually wrong. Then there's avoidance. And this one needs a careful distinction, because avoidance in the context of anxiety doesn't look like not caring. It looks like caring so much that the cost of showing up, the anticipatory anxiety, the performance of being okay, the recovery time afterward, starts to outweigh the connection itself. So you cancel, or you go quiet, or you find reasons to be in a different room. Not to punish anyone, not because you don't love them, because your nervous system has learned that proximity to something unpredictable, even something you love, requires a level of energy it doesn't always have. And then there's the third mechanism, the one that's hardest to explain. Emotional unavailability, not as a choice, but as a physiological state. When the threat detection system is running, it draws resources, attention, processing capacity, the ability to access warmth, softness, humor, presence. Those things don't disappear, they get redirected. And the person on the other side of you, the one trying to reach you, encounters something that feels like a wall, not hostility, not indifference, just an absence where you were a moment ago. That wall is not a choice. It's what a nervous system looks like when it's managing something it hasn't finished processing. Here's the part that almost never gets said. The people who love you are also carrying something. They're just carrying a different version of it. What they experience isn't your anxiety. They can't access that. They experience its shadow. The canceled plan, with no explanation they could hold on to. The conversation where you were technically there and clearly gone. The apology for something they didn't even notice, which made them wonder what they were supposed to have noticed. The moments where they reached for you and found someone managing something invisible and didn't know whether to push through or give you space and guessed wrong either way. They don't have the mechanism, they only have the behavior. And without the mechanism, the behavior tells a story. The story it tells is usually one of these. You don't want to be here, or you're not interested anymore, or the one that does the most damage. You're choosing the noise in your head over the person in front of you. That's not the true story. But it's the story an unexplained absence tells. And this is where the real cost lives. Not in the individual moments of withdrawal or absence or over-apologizing. In the accumulation of those moments, unlabeled, into a narrative that neither of you chose and both of you are now living inside. The people who love you have been trying to reach someone who was trying to stay safe. Those two things happened at the same time. Neither of them was wrong. They just didn't have a shared language for what was happening between them. And that is a different story than the one you've been telling yourself. The story you've been telling yourself is probably something like, I keep letting people down. I'm too much. Or not enough. I'm broken in a way that relationships can feel. The truer version is this. Your nervous system learned, in specific and real circumstances, that closeness required vigilance. That love came with risk. That being fully present, fully open, was a position that left you exposed in ways that once were genuinely dangerous. That learning happened for a reason. It just never got updated. And it's been running in every relationship since. That's not a character flaw. That's a nervous system pattern. And patterns, unlike character, can change. If this is landing somewhere specific, if there's a relationship or a pattern across relationships, that this is putting language to, there's a resource in the description built exactly for this. The Anxiety Relationship Repair Guide goes deeper into each of these mechanisms and includes exercises for communicating the invisible experience to the people closest to you. Not scripts, not templates, but the actual framework for building a shared language where there hasn't been one. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. So what actually changes when you understand this? Not everything. Not immediately. But a few things shift in ways that matter. The first shift is internal, and it's the most important one. When the hypervigilance activates, when you catch yourself reading tone, replaying a conversation, scanning for a threat that may or may not be there, you now have a name for what's happening. Not something is wrong and not I'm overreacting. My nervous system is running its threat detection pattern. This is what that feels like. That's not a thought that makes the pattern stop, but it changes the relationship between you and the pattern. You're observing it instead of being fully inside it. And that small distance, that single millimeter of space, is where interruption becomes possible. The second shift is relational, and it requires something that feels uncomfortable before it feels useful. Naming the mechanism, not in the middle of the activated moment, but in a quiet one, to the people who have been on the other side of it. Not as an explanation that makes the behavior acceptable, not as a way of outsourcing the work of changing it, but as a way of offering the mechanism where before there was only the behavior. Sometimes I go quiet in a way that probably feels like withdrawal. It's not about you. It's my nervous system. Doing something specific, and I'm working on it, is a different thing to receive than unexplained absence. It doesn't fix the pattern, but it closes the interpretive gap. It gives the people who love you something to hold, other than the story the behavior was telling. The third shift is the one this audience tends to resist most. Releasing the standard of explanation. A lot of anxious people, especially those who function at high levels everywhere else, carry an internal requirement that they should be able to fully explain and justify every anxious response before they're allowed to ask for accommodation. I'll tell you about this when I understand it well enough. I'll name what's happening when I can do it clearly. I don't want to burden you with something I can't even articulate yet. The nervous system doesn't work on that timeline. The people closest to you don't need a perfect explanation. They need approximate contact with what's actually happening, even when what's actually happening is, I don't fully know yet. Approximate is enough. Approximate is, in fact, what connection is made of. The anxious mind wants to arrive at the relationship with the full, defensible account. The nervous system just needs you to show up before you have it. And that specific thing, showing up before you're ready to explain, is not a lowering of the relational standard. It's the actual thing that repairs. If this opens something specific about a relationship you're carrying, the resource in the description goes exactly where this video pointed. Link in the description and in the pinned comment. What's the one relational pattern in this video that you recognized most in yourself? And what does it cost you that you haven't been able to explain to anyone? So here's what this actually was. Not a catalog of your relational failures. Not evidence that anxiety makes you a bad partner, a bad friend, someone who takes more than they give. A map of what a nervous system looks like when it's been running a protection strategy inside spaces that were supposed to feel safe and didn't know how to stop. The hypervigilance that scans your partner's face for signs of a problem that isn't there. The avoidance that protects you from the cost of showing up when the tank is already empty. The emotional unavailability that isn't distance. It's a nervous system mid-process, temporarily unable to route the warmth it actually has. None of those are character. All of them are pattern. And patterns have mechanisms, and mechanisms, once visible, can be interrupted. The people who love you have been experiencing the shadow of something they couldn't see. You've been carrying the weight of something you couldn't name. Both of those things have been true at the same time, in the same relationship, without either of you knowing what to do with them. That's not a love story that's broken. That's a love story that's been missing a shared language. You don't need to have the full language before you start. You don't need to have resolved the pattern before you bring someone else into an approximate understanding of it. The nervous system doesn't need a perfect account. It needs something to practice on. And the relationship doesn't need you to arrive fixed. It needs you to arrive with something more than silence about what's been happening inside you. That's different work than you've probably been trying to do. It's smaller than you thought, and it's available right now in whatever the next conversation is. Not the perfect one, just the next one. Anyone who's been in this knows that the next one is closer than it feels.